Hello, this is Siri and you're listening to my favorite podcast, Not Real Art. I live for this shit cause it's totally lit.
Let's go!
Greetings, artists and art lovers. Welcome to Not Real Art, the podcast that celebrates artists defining creative culture around the world. I'm your host, Sourdough, and on today's episode, I'm honored to be joined by a true multidisciplinary artist whose career spans 4 decades. In 1971, his work was commissioned by Ray Charles for the album Message from the People. At one point in his career, he was even an award-winning producer at Motown Records. I could go on, but before I do, I want to welcome to the show the incredibly gifted artist, Cleophus.
Well, hello.
Good morning, sir.
I'm doing great.
Excellent, excellent. You seem very happy.
Yes, I am.
You walked in smiling.
Well, I'm happy with the opportunity to discuss what I do.
That's right. What do you do, sir?
Well, I do multifaceted artworks spanning all the medias. Basically, though, I'm sort of a photorealist. But I do abstracts, I do everything, and I do commissions. I've worked for a company for years where all I did every day was just come in, have my coffee, and think of something new to do to sell to the public, which was mainly through the home furnishing industry.
Oh, interesting.
Well, you go into a store, you see a painting behind a couch.
That's you. That was you.
Yes, that was
Wow.
me. For years, I did that.
What was the name of the company?
Art Master Studio. And if you go to my website, you'll see like the Art Master collection. I've sold thousands of pictures all over the world, and there might be anything, like landscapes, seascapes.
Mm-hmm.
I'm mostly interested in my wildlife art, which I became real proficient at. We became very big at the time, up until 1993, which I left the company to venture into the fine art world.
Mm-hmm.
And whoa, that was hard.
What was the struggle? What was...
Well, coming from commercial to the fine art world, which is mostly deal with the academia.
Yeah, right.
So how they get funded, how you get your stuff. It always amazed me. I would look at these artists that have these big studios and these big warehouses. And I'm sitting up here saying, gee, how in the world do they afford that?
Yeah.
Whereas I'm paying for storage with 2 units and it's killing me.
Right.
Where do they put their art until they sell it?
Yeah.
They make these sculptures, and so it's great to make it, but you have to hold it somewhere to sell it.
Yes.
And that must cost a fortune. So it's been a struggle, but I'm really progressing with the new art that I'm creating.
How many pieces in your inventory right now, you think?
Maybe 200 or 300.
Wow.
But that includes, original pieces.
Sure.
Also, there's framed limited edition prints, things like that I go do. I go do these occasional Rotary shows or outdoor air markets.
Yes.
And so you have to have a multitude of variety of stuff to sell.
All right.
And so a lot of it's that. But what I'm really excited about is the 3-dimensional works that I'm working on now. And
I saw a few of them on your website. They're quite stunning.
There's only a few on there, and the reason for that is just that for a long time I was harboring them as trade secrets. And but as I get on in age, I'm worried that I can't share any of this with the rest of the world. And so hopefully it won't die with me. So I'm anxious in getting it out there so they can see it. I must have right now at least 12 to 18 pieces that are in different stages of completion. And they're, to me, phenomenal pieces. Of course, every artist would say that.
But you would regard it as some of your best work to date.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
Yes. So how did you find yourself starting to create 3-dimensional work?
Oh, wow.
What was that journey like?
I don't need, I think when I was working for Art Master Studio, we came up with these 3-dimensional canvases that we were making. And, of course, they're, since you're using copy artists and we're manufacturers, we're just trying to make something that's cost effective.
Yes.
And so we made these products, but in the research for making those products, I just went off into a thing. So I started looking at architecture and stuff. And I started looking at the cast of shadows, which, half of what we see is light and shadow.
Yeah.
And I just said, well, gee, I just want to make this stuff. And I called it shadow art. And I just started making pieces. And of course, the originals were maybe, sometimes they were geometric designs or optical art illusions that you might have seen in the 60s.
Yeah.
But I would make all these things, and they were mostly monochromatic or just white.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously, when the light's in the right place and you just look straight at them, well, gee, you see nothing.
Right. It might look two-dimensional.
Yes.
Yeah.
And as you move, I got caught up in this fourth dimensional thing like, gee, the person that's watching, he's the animator.
Yeah. Oh,
he's
wow.
moving, the shadow's moving, time is moving, the shadow, and you're doing these crazy things. So those were the first pieces. And then I added images to those pieces. Well, the images made a complexion of things, sort of like the artist Chuck Close work does. Except that you would have this dimensional thing happening. And so what happens is you create something like a living art.
Yes. Yeah.
You know how you walk into as an artist, I used to go to my galleries and see the exhibitions.
Sure.
And you see the person walking by, he hardly ever breaks stride. He just walks and he looks and he walks. And I said, gee, what if you could make them stop?
Yes.
Then what if you could make them make a retake?
Right.
And
Right.
that's what this sort of did. So I started creating these pockets of interest, which is similar to what Chuck Close does, except that I was doing it dimensionally.
Yeah.
And a lot of these pieces might be as little as just a high relief, but some of them might come off of the canvas or the surface as much as 2 to 3 inches,
Well,
or up to 10 inches even.
sure. Wow.
And in these things, I'd have all these words and silhouettes and things cut out. So where you're looking at them and the shadow is creating another image and the image is saying one thing, and then you're walking up and you're seeing these things. And then I ended up doing stuff like a legacy, what I call a legacy portrait.
Okay.
I started with maybe Martin Luther King or something, where I'd have embedded in the sculpture the I Have a Dream speech,
Yes.
that you could actually read it and stuff.
Yeah, I saw that on your website as well. There was something, one of the pieces like that.
And then I migrated into Tupac and Biggie, which I did recently.
Yeah.
And I wanted to create their whole history, discography,
Yep.
everything in there, and so that you could read it, sort of like a newsprint.
Yep.
And you just go up close and you start reading one thing. And I watched people, and I've observed them watching these pieces. And I saw that they were getting a big interest out of those little pockets of interest,
Right.
which led me to doing more of those things. And that's what my new work is.
Well, the layers and the depth that comes with that. I mean, I think any person who truly appreciates intelligent artwork would have to be engaged by those pieces.
Well, thank you.
But, that's easy for me to say because I really like them.
Well, I hope so. Well, that's been my thing. I was one time doing a sketch. I work a lot in graphite because it's easier.
Yeah.
But it's a hard media because, the difference between that and like say, for example, charcoal is that when you're doing charcoal, you can go top over and you put your whites on top or your lighter tones. But with pencil, sort of like watercolor, you have to leave it. So it's a negative. You're working negative. So every time you see a little white hair, it means that the artist went around that.
Yeah, right. Right. Incredible.
To leave it.
Yeah.
And so I was working at Panera's and I was doing this portrait, and I had a friend of mine take pictures of me doing the portrait. I wanted to have some documentation, and he got all excited about taking pictures of the crowd that was forming, watching me do this. And then looking back on all those photographs that he shot, I noticed that the people were in awe and everything, not so much of the piece that I was doing, but the fact that I was doing it with a insignificant pencil that everybody uses.
Yeah, right. Right.
In
the hand of a master. Right. I mean, a pencil is a pencil, but put in the hand of a master, suddenly it becomes a magical wand.
It's sort of like your finger, like you can paint with your finger, your foot, anything,
Yes. Yes. Finger painting is my specialty, I think, but that's because my son loves to do that in the bath. That's a whole nother podcast.
Yeah, I did that too.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think all of us did that.
That's right.
When we're youth, we express ourselves more fully. We get in tune with our feelings and we put them down.
So who are some of your inspirations coming up?
The shadow art, I like Louise Nevelson. You know, she has these found pieces that she puts together, and they're usually all white. And they're just structures that she pulls together and she makes into conglomeration of a sculpture. But I think probably I was more intrigued by people like Norman Rockwell. I mean, the stories that they would tell.
Yeah, right.
You know, and as a kid growing up, I was a problem student because I was dyslexic and didn't know what it was, and nobody knew what it was at the time, it seemed. And so they would put you into these remedial reading classes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I became the joke of the class, you know, so drawing crazy cartoons of my teachers and everything. But reading in the books, I noticed like Andrew White and all these people would tell such great stories, not just depicting what the author had written in a novel, but as an extension to that.
Yes.
And that's what I really wanted to do. And so when I went to art school, I just wanted to do that. Of course, when I got to art school, it was more in a transitional stage, I should say, where going from the photographic or real illustrations to a more materials and method.
Sure.
And which I hated at the time, but as it went on, I found out that, this became the cornerstone of my career as a designer of this commercial art that I did called production art.
Well, I mean, your educational CV is incredibly impressive. I mean, you got a scholarship at to Chenard.
Yeah, that was a remark. But you know, there's a limited scholarship.
Well, right. But you got it.
Yeah.
That's all that matters. And then from there on to, I think, Otis.
Yes.
Right?
Well, you know, actually, that was during the stay there. You know, at that time, you could go to school and you could transfer your credits from college to college.
Yes.
You can't do that
No.
today anymore.
Yeah.
So Otis was right around, you know, by MacArthur Park, was right on the other side of the park.
Yep.
So I could go over there and I could take a course in the evening over there and then come back over to Chenard in the day and do that. And then and Otis Art Center was right there on 3rd Street, which is not that far at the time too.
Right.
So it was all kind of grouped together.
Yeah. And then from there, UCLA Extension and then Art Center.
Yes.
As well. Wow.
And I didn't graduate, so I don't have any credentials. So I probably would love to teach, and I would love to teach and tutor and to pass on some of this stuff. But since I didn't have the credentials, it makes it a little difficult at this point in time.
So what is your practice like now? I mean, in terms of like when you take us through your day, when you wake up in the morning, do you find morning time to be good for creative thinking and then afternoon for production? I mean, how do you structure your day?
I'm a full-fledged designer. See, so first of all, when I wake up in the morning, I like to start working on something. I might wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning and jot down a note or something or solve a work-related problem in my mind, almost in that like twilight sleep that people call.
Yep.
I actually create everything. So when I'm actually in my studio, all I'm doing is copying what's in my head or trying to make notes to not forget.
Yeah, right.
You know, my work day is probably about 12 hours.
Okay.
I mean, I'm constantly working. I love to go out to it's like a coffee shop with my laptop or something.
Yes.
And do more digital type things and putting down my ideas, where in the past we would make thumbnail sketches and stuff.
Yeah, right.
But in this digital age, we have this convenience, and I would do that. Then I would go and do the studio, and then I'll work until maybe 3 and have dinner. Then I'll watch TV or something for a little while.
Sure.
Then I'll start working again, and I'll work till about 12:30 or 1 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
Then I'm up again at 4 or 5 the next day.
Wash, rinse, repeat.
7 days a week. I mean, I live and die art. It's like the ideas keep coming.
Yes. Isn't that a blessing and a curse, though?
It is. But you know what? It's not as bad as being tied up and getting typecast, where you're creating the same thing over and over again.
Yes.
Looking for new resources.
Right.
And I've had those things happen too, but not that often. I mean, even when I was in the music field, you can get to the point to where every song starts sounding the same.
Okay, so you bring it up. I got to go there. Like Motown Records, my man. Like, this is incredible.
Yeah, that
award-winning producer, right?
Yeah, that was sort of an accident that happened. I was at Art Master
Beautiful
Studio.
accident.
Yes, it was. But it got to the point to where I was in the studio till 6 o'clock in the morning, come home, take a shower, then go to my regular gig, which was paying for everything.
Right, sure.
And so I had to at some point make a choice. And at the time, I wanted more independence because it seemed like I would get the new artists that they were signing to the label, and then I'd get them to a point to where they would actually become marketable, and then they'd give them over to Quincy Jones or something.
Q again.
Oh, by the way, he's a guy that I would love to do a legacy portrait of. It's like people, when you do these legacy portraits about people that have a story to tell.
Yes.
And something to leave besides just an image. And since I have the ability to do these photorealistic images, which, by the way, is an art form that's sort of dying. I'm like, feel like a dinosaur. It's a way of keeping them alive a little longer.
Well, I would argue part of the reason it's dying is because kids in art school these days most of these schools don't even teach them how to draw.
Well, you're right. But there are these courses that allow for professionals, even though they might be in the commercial art field, to extend their career, and you go in, you're with an artist like me that will teach or at least share with you some of his experiences on certain professional levels to give that to you. But it also seems like the focus is just not on that anymore. It's more about the emotion of what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
Rather than the skill it takes to get there. And then with technology, in the digital age, it makes it very easy. For example, if you're a singer and you're a little off pitch, well, they got something to make you on pitch.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
If you need 20,000 tracks to play, you cannot be a musician actually proficient and pick away with one finger like you were typing and make a masterpiece.
Yes.
Or with your phone, get a prize-winning picture accidentally.
Right. Yeah, right.
Because it's still good.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
So it makes it hard, but it's still there, I figure that my biggest role that I would like to partake is to sort of hold back the tide a little bit. Everybody focuses on pushing the envelope. Well, I'm a traditionalist, but I'm not. I'm sort of a tweener. I like to be able to dabble in the digital world.
Yes.
But keep some of the old stuff.
Well, you truly have laid that foundation. I mean, you do have the skills and the tools in your toolbox. You mentioned the digital, you mentioned the computer, your laptop, your digital tools, and how much you enjoy them. And by the way, you've earned your chops. You can enjoy it because you deserve to enjoy it because you've laid that foundation. What I have remember years ago when I was doing a lot of hiring, I think I mentioned prior to recording that I used to work in advertising as a graphic designer. And then eventually, I would got into management, what have you, and I would hire artists or designers. And a lot of these young kids coming out of design school, they would be anxious to show me these beautiful finished works. And I said, well, where's your sketchbook? Well, you want to see my
How did you get there?
Yeah, that's right. How did you think? Well, I want to see how you think. I want to see, and the reality was that a lot of these kids jump right onto the computer. They don't take the sketchbook out and ponder their ideas and work their ideas through. To me, the computer always comes, at the right time, which is when you are ready to sit down and actually start producing that idea that you've thought through on the page, right?
Well, but I think it's a tool just like the pencil. I mean, I know right now with tablets you can actually draw and you can do your thumbnails on the computer.
Yes.
But the big advantage of a computer and creating is just like you being in the studio making music. You got all these tracks, and eventually it's got to all come down to 2 tracks, stereo. Now, out of all this stuff that you recorded, though, is all great. You got to make a choice of what to use.
Yeah.
But you can always go back, and that's what the digital age allows.
Yes.
Imagine I create a design. We'll just say it's geometric.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to get to the one that I finally use, I've obviously have several variations, right?
Yes.
Well, all those variations are recorded and adaptable. Now, say that becomes successful, all right, that one. Now, I want something similar to that. All I got to do is go back and look at those other things and say, oh, I moved this over there, move this over here a little bit, move that over there. So one thing's become an endless supply of one creation.
What I really appreciate about that point is that nothing's more valuable than our time, right? And to your point is like, wait a minute, that time wasn't wasted. I actually have, not that it was wasted anyway, but that because you have it saved, though, you can then go back and monetize it or use it if you were able to leverage that time.
And not only you're dead and gone.
Right.
Somebody else can come and use it.
That's right. That's right.
It keeps living.
Yes. I've said it many times. I think this is the best time ever to be an artist in many ways. We have more mediums, more tools, more opportunities, maybe more appreciation. But it's the flip side of that is that, to the point you were touching on earlier, these tools have democratized creativity in so many ways that now, there's a lot of, quote unquote artists out there who maybe haven't earned their chops and laid that foundation. That artists like you have.
That's true. Life is a cycle. Yeah. Everything's a cycle.
Yep.
I remember before your time, because I'm older than you, a lot older than you. But
I'm 49. So how old are you, Cleophus?
Hey, I'm 75.
70, but you, I hope I look that good when I'm 75.
Yeah, that's what everybody tells me. But you know what? I look in the mirror and I see 75. But the point I'm getting, but I don't feel 75.
That's right.
Because age is just,
it's mental. It's so mental.
That's right.
Yeah.
But I remember the time when we were more in a do-it-yourself world.
Yeah, right.
I could tell you something like the paint by number kit.
Yeah.
Everybody was an artist and able to attach themselves to that. Well, we're sort of in that recycle phase right now.
Yeah.
To where you can be a plumber, you can be an artist, you can be a photographer, you can be whatever you want. Just digitally plug in, and there's a means to do that.
Mm-hmm.
The creative spirit is still there, even though you don't have the technical skills. But I've always lived by the theory that cream always comes to the top.
That's right.
So those that, even though everybody has a camera on their phone and they're becoming so sophisticated, it's unbelievable, it's driving the photographers out of business.
Yes.
But still, they'll have to go back and correct those things. There's still a place cream always comes to the top.
Right. Listening to you reminds me of a story. So there was a gentleman by the name of Gordon McKenzie. And Gordon was, for many years, I don't know if he's still there, but for many years, he was the chief creative director for Hallmark cards.
Oh, yes.
Okay?
I love Hallmark cards.
Right. And so he wrote a book 10, 15 years ago called Orbiting the Giant Hairball. Okay. And the purpose of this book, it's a great book, and it's about how, and you'll appreciate this having worked in a corporate environment as an artist, but the idea of the book is how do you maintain your artistic integrity when you are working inside a corporate behemoth or a publicly traded organization, what have you, like a Hallmark Cards. And he was sort of telling his story as an artist working there. And but this one of the anecdotes that he talked about in the book, as a speaker, he would go and talk to school kids. Right. And he would talk to kindergartners, first graders, different grades. And he always started his talks by asking the same question. And that question was, who here is an artist? Well, in kindergarten, every kid raises their hand.
Exactly.
Right? You see where this is going, right?
Oh, yes.
By the third grade, he said, like maybe one little kid in the back, raised their hand. Yeah, I'm an artist. And, it's just such a tragic story, right? Because, here we are born with this belief and desire and ability to create and be creative and think of ourselves as artists. But somehow the system we've designed in education, what have you, seems to squash that in such a way that,
Would you know that the artist is a rebel? You know that.
Yes, that's right.
And that's why. Most people are trying to
interesting
conform.
point.
See, and so nobody wants to be the rebel, and few people want to wear that belt. Yes. And so by them removing it, it also removes independent thought.
Right.
That's your rebel. You're saying, so what? It's been done this way. Why not do it another way?
Yes. That's a really profound point you're making. The way of sort of, making us conform to a preordained set of rules.
Making us more robotic, more controlled, actually.
Yeah, right.
When you get right down to it.
For sure.
I've spent most of my artistic life, as a means to an end. I mean, the things that I dream up in my head, I haven't even begun to even do.
Right.
I mean, I'm still the guy that when I was 21 and decided, all I want to do is some art. I don't want much,
Yeah.
I've never done that art yet. I've been doing stuff to show my potential. And other than that, I've been going to work to feed my family. So I'm thinking back, gee, if I lived 200 years ago, what would I be doing? I mean, I can understand why Rembrandt did lithographs that he sold pretty much like I'm selling a production art. I mean, he had artists come in, and even Audubon, to that fact, did these great illustrations and have artists come in watercolor because he didn't have a color printer,
Right.
So we're doing the same thing. Kincaid does something. The artist Kincaid does something.
The artist of lights.
Yes, exactly. And so I profound that theory when I did production art. All I did was, by the way, production art is a loose term. Not many people know about it, and I certainly didn't know about it. I got out of art school. I went in Santa Monica to get a job, and I was just happy to get any job doing anything that was related to art.
Yes, for sure.
And so I walked in and I saw all these hundreds of pictures in a row that all look identical. And one artist walking down doing dabs of this and dabs of that. And I'm saying, damn, the guy says, well, hey, can you do this? Oh, yeah, of course, I can do this. Having a clue of what the hell's going on.
Fake it till you make it.
And so I walked into this field and I just started doing this stuff. And make a long story short, I become very quick at doing art, which led me to designing.
Yes.
And so when I got to designing, I said, well, gee, if I can put my finger on the pulse of what is really selling and what people want, considering the price that they're willing to pay for it, then I can become a good designer. And so I would go to places like Hallmark Cards, which was one of my biggest things. I walk up and down the aisles and I'd see the trends. I'd see the colors that they're buying. I see the sentiments that they're going to, and realizing that that guy is really just writing something for somebody else that don't have the words themselves.
Yep.
I said, now, if I can do that with art, then I can sell art.
Yes.
And I can feed my family. And in the meantime, build enough money for me to do the art that I wanted to do when I was 21.
Yes, for sure. For sure. Tell us about your family.
Well, hey, my family is very creative like me. Even the offshoots, I have like 6 brothers and sisters. They're all creative in different ways.
Are you the youngest, the oldest, the middle?
I'm the second. I'm the second. And my oldest sister passed away at a young age of dementia. But so I'm the oldest right now and carrying the torch. And so, I have 5 great grandkids.
Wow.
Which is crazy.
Wow.
And
That's
by the
so
way,
great.
these kids are having kids before they're even ready to walk, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, right.
Right out of high school and stuff. I think that's a trend that it happened when I was going to school, but it certainly hasn't been until recently. And most of them are in Michigan, my immediate family.
Are you? But you grew up in South Central.
Oh, yeah. I'm from here.
How did your people end up in Michigan?
Well, my wife, we got divorced and she moved back to Michigan.
Okay.
Took the kids with her.
Okay.
And so they're still there. Right now, she's living in Atlanta. And of course, my granddaughter's living in Atlanta also. The rest of my family, I have 2 granddaughters and 2 grandsons. And all of them but one of them have kids. One of them have 2 kids. So
yeah.
My youngest grandson, he's into music, just like me. He's a producer. He taught himself to read and write and orchestrate music.
Which you did as well.
Yeah.
Because you have this whole part of your life that's very music-centric.
Yes, my son does too. He does art and music as well. He's getting back to art now, but he's just finished 2 or 3 albums of his own. My nieces are fashion. By the way, my 2 oldest sisters, all of my sisters were fashion designers.
Wow.
Their kids all in graphic arts or something or that, or photography.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a very creative family.
So where's all this creative energy coming from? Your mom, your dad, I mean, your grandparents?
Honestly, I really don't know, because my parents, I didn't get to know a lot about their dreams. Now that I think about it, now that you're mentioning it, I don't know what their aspirations were or anything.
Yeah.
All they wanted was for their kids to have a chance.
Well, it's a different era too, right? I mean, we're living in this time where, this idea of being able to, pursue your dreams and do, I mean, it feels very,
Yes.
they
were born in the South in Arkansas.
Right.
Both my parents. My dad really don't even know when he was born.
Yeah.
There's no documentation or anything like that.
Right.
And so my mother kept getting pregnant. I mean, God bless. I mean, I can't believe the things, before birth control and stuff.
Sure.
She told me she had 21 miscarriages. Can you believe that? Usually 1 or 2 would kill somebody, and she had 7 kids. So all she did was have babies.
Right.
And so, but before she passed away, she told me, I always wanted these things for you guys.
Yeah.
And I never got to do them.
Yeah.
When you talk about my artistic ability, I have a kinship with my dad because I can you pack a storage center, like look across the room and say, that box will fit there.
Yeah, right. Tetris. Yes.
Yes. He could take a truck, I'm talking about a half-ton truck, go up stories and keep stacking stuff and move stuff.
Oh, my gosh.
And so I would figure that was probably the artistic ability that he had.
Sure.
And he was a track star. He used to tell me stories like he could catch a horse running across the field.
That's fast.
Diagonally.
Yeah.
And he only had 3rd grade education.
Right.
He became a minister, pretty large minister in Los Angeles, taught himself how to read and write while I was struggling trying to learn how to read and write.
Yes.
Because of dyslexia.
Yes.
So
which they didn't know much about in those years, right?
Oh, no, they just hoarded you. Well, they just put us all in a remedial reading class.
Right. These kids are broken. We'll put them in their own
But the
space.
funny thing about dyslexia, you get all the top, like Einstein and all these people.
Yep.
Makes you wonder.
I think it's a sign of intelligence, generally.
Right. Hey, Jerry, you're right on. That's exactly what I was getting ready to say. A lot of your artists, a lot of your actors and stuff, you'll find I'm just amazed every day that somebody's admitting that they're dyslexic. And it's a way of looking at everything from a 4th dimension.
Yes.
Or looking from the backwards.
Right.
And I'll find myself, you go into a restaurant and they have a sign on the door that says push and pull.
Yeah.
I'm reading the reverse one.
Right.
I'm always doing the one before the other.
Yeah.
Which is why you want to write duh, you might write EHT.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. But it took, so when were you officially diagnosed? Like how many years was it before
I never was.
Yeah,
I stumbled onto it because I was doing cost studies for the product that we were making at Art Masters. I'm 35 years old. And I'm sitting up here noticing, going back and looking over my figures, that I'm reversing numbers. And I saw something on TV that says, this is dyslexic.
Yeah.
I said, oh.
That makes sense.
Now I can remember sitting between my mother's legs, reading the Dick and Jane books. And she would tell me a phrase, tell me the word that I would stumble on. Then we'd go back and reread and I wouldn't know the word. She'd get so upset.
Right.
And I'm sitting up here saying, well, words are pictures.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so until you can create the picture from the word or the symbol.
Right.
And those are the very things that dyslexic people have trouble with.
Yeah.
But they see things from a different place.
And it ends up being a gift.
Yes.
In the end.
A gift that other people use for you. You usually don't get to reap the benefits from that gift.
Yeah, right. You have an incredibly artistic family. Your kids are in music. They're in art. How many of these, I'm a new dad. Okay, let's put it this way, right? So I'm a new dad. I am 49. I got 2 kids under 7. I got a son that's 2 and a daughter that's 6.5. Help.
All right, I'm going to tell you some things and mistakes that I made with my son, and I'm going through a battle with my grandkids right now. When you notice a unique ability, then you make that ability a requisite, a discipline.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they do instead of going out and playing and stuff. This seems a little harsh, I know. But the trouble is, when you do that, you are developing them for something that they'll pull back on later. But you can be overbearing in doing that, and I wouldn't have liked the Michael Jackson.
Yeah.
So you don't want to sort of force kids to do anything because they're actually choosing what they want to do.
Right.
And you can see what they want to do. I remember my kid, and this is something that I ignored at the time, or just thought it was cute. I'm sitting up having a rehearsal with guys in the singing group. I'm singing and playing and trying to get my songs done. And he's just, my wife left us there, and he's rocking with his diaper, and the diaper is almost down to the floor. We're busy doing what we're doing.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
He's shitting.
And he's busy doing what he's doing.
And he's rocking back and forth to the music.
Yeah.
I'm noticing none of that.
Right.
But later on, I'm noticing that if I had noticed that, then I could have nurtured him more in the music and stuff that I was doing. A lot of times we assume that our kids are doing what we're doing because they want to emulate us.
Mm.
You know, because that's what my dad doing, so I want to be my dad.
Yeah.
And if it's a son, it's confrontational.
Right.
It's a competition all the way because he wants to be the man of the house.
Yeah.
Basically speaking, if you were to leave, he's going to tell your wife what to do.
Yeah.
This is true. This is men and women are not the same.
Right.
Even though the new thing going on now that I don't know which it is. But the truth is, the guy wants to run the house. And my son was that way too.
Mm.
Later on, it just developed to where I could have given him a lot of things that I knew how to give him and didn't.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, you know, it's like I'm seeing a lot of parents, you know, who are, well, living their own lives through their kids.
Well, that's not a good
Right.
thing.
I see that. I see parents who are incredibly anxious to pack their child's lives with activities, you know, every minute. So, you know, so the time for free play, the time for just relaxing, hanging out, like, you know,
they're not kids very long.
Right. You exactly. So, and there's so much pressure. And I remember going to this, well, I'm going to go there because it's a long story, but the point is that there's all this pressure to make sure your kid is on this track for success. You know, let the kid become the kid, you know, like be who they are. Like I was telling my wife, you know, we've talked about this a lot, obviously. It's like, you know, I just am trying to create the space that allows them to become the people they're meant to become.
Well, I think it's a medium. I don't think you want to let them have all the free space.
Yeah.
But I do think, well, you know, in the beginning, at some point, you give them a lot of choices. And when you take your kid to like ballet dance and this and that, a lot of that is just a search for what they have a knack for.
Right.
They're going to tell you what they have a knack for. Once you see that knack,
right,
get rid of all that other baggage.
That's right.
And make that a prerequisite.
Yes.
You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying.
And you got to do that before 13.
Right.
You know, 13, they know. You think back when you were 13, you knew where you was going, what you wanted to be and everything.
Yep.
You at least knew a direction.
Yep.
You know, and so do your kids.
Right.
Except that the kids today seem smarter because of the digital age, but they're ignorant in a lot of other ways.
Yep, for sure. For sure.
And they don't get a chance to develop as kids. You want them to develop and have fun and all that stuff. But you just want to be attuned to them. And I think a lot of parents today use all these other things as occupying the kids' time so that I'm not there.
Digital pacifiers, iPads, all that stuff.
Well, whatever it is they're doing, if you're part of that,
right,
then you'll find that you're not going to fill them so packed with a lot of stuff because you're giving them part of what they need.
That's right. That's sage advice because, you know, that's, you know, I'm seeing, you know, the natural abilities emerge from the kids, you know, and I want to fuel that, you know.
You
know, because that's what they're telling me, right?
Yes.
But what gives you hope, Cleophus, in this crazy world?
I don't know. I have cause to ponder.
Well, your father was a minister.
No, I'm an optimistic person.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the glass is always half full to me.
Yes.
And so my hope is just that I could live 200 years and do all these creative things in my head on the personal level. As far as my family, gee, God, I just want to get them on track to where they have the opportunity to do the same.
Yes.
And that's a big feat, believe it or not.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But that's my hope. And I have stronger hope for this country. Goodness, I'm a little bit concerned.
Yeah. I know a lot of artists who would really hope that their kids would avoid being an artist or not work in the arts. And,
well, I want them to choose. I don't want to. I would never tell when people come to me and they ask me to encourage artists and stuff. Gee, I want to be encouraging, but the truth of the matter is, I want them to choose because I think those that choose it will survive it.
Mm.
If you push them into it, because it would be like an actor going to get a job and he goes do interviews and all he's going to hear all day long is you're too fat, you're too ugly, you're too tall, you're too cute, you can't do this. So he's going to hear a lot of more no's than he does yes.
Yep.
And when it comes to athletics, you can put all that in them, not realizing that they need something to fall back on.
Right.
Because that just might not happen because percentages say, no, you're not going to win the lottery.
Yeah, right.
And so
you're not going to play in the NBA.
Yeah.
Right.
But I'm optimistic though.
Yeah, I think what's the alternative, right? I mean, we have to be. I try to be, I try to be realistic, but I definitely err on the side of optimism. And I think that's changed because I became a dad. I want my kids to be optimistic. I was probably more nihilistic before before I was a dad.
Well, actually, you're going to see them as an extension of yourself fulfill a lot more things than you would have ever fulfilled.
Right. Well, Cleophus, this podcast is not about me. It's about you. I don't know how we end up talking about me, but I got to hear this story. So you were commissioned for artwork for the Ray Charles record.
Oh, yeah.
Tell us that story.
That was a crazy time. I was working at Art Master Studios, and my bosses were very indulgent of that because I had to use a lot of my time to do that.
Mm.
I was just trying to write music. I didn't even know that I could be a producer or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
This was way before then. And I just had a friend that was doing a recording studio at ABC Records on Washington in Los Angeles, on Washington Street. And so I went along, hoping to say, gee, I can get somebody to do one of my songs or something like that. And I'm listening to the guy and he's singing and re-recording. And so I had taught myself how to play piano in the church by ear.
Mm-hmm.
And so they were having trouble in the studio, and it was the studio for this other group was in Ray Charles' studio at ABC Records. Anyway, they had a little problem there, and they just kept, and then my big mouth comes open, and I solved their problem for them. The guy says, "Oh, do you read and write music?" I said, "Oh, yeah, I read and write music. I do a lot of stuff." He said, "Yeah." I said, "Oh, that's interesting. Do you do arrangements?" I say, "Oh, yeah, I can do orchestral arrangements." Don't know shit about what I'm talking about. Because the answer is never no.
Yeah.
Because every day I left my house, all I wanted to do was make some money, plant a seed,
Yep.
and get back home.
Yep.
And I'm just planting a seed. And little did I know from that situation, this guy, which was an A&R, there for some new thing that they were doing there with these unknown groups, called me up and says, well, how much do you charge for your arrangement? I have no idea what they charge for arrangements.
Yeah, right.
So I'm sitting there and says, well, I don't know, $200? He says, yeah, of course. Says, we can even do a couple of your songs. I said, oh, yeah, well, we can do some stuff. So he said, well, when can you come down? Now I'm confronted with the fact that I done told this guy that I know how to write strings and horns, and I don't know shit about nothing.
It turns out it's more fertilizer than seed, but you know.
That's right. So I went into the library and I learned how to write strings and stuff. And I go back and I do this one recording of somebody signed to Ray Charles' label who was a jazz musician. Don't know a lot about jazz or anything. So I took all the stuff I learned and I really learned a lot about strings. And the string instrument or the string section is a great thing. Well, obviously, it's like a kid in the candy store. Strings can do so many things to all. I just killed this guy's album. I mean, I feel that's one of the most regrettable things because I took and did everything that the string could do to every arrangement on his song.
Okay.
I mean, I had it bowing and chucking and bowing with the wood and I mean everything. And it was a jazz album.
Kitchen sink, baby.
It's an instrumental jazz album too. It's not like it was singing or anything.
Right.
And so from that, I met Ray Charles. And while I was there, he had this album and he wanted me to do an album cover. And he said, well, I'm working on this thing, Message from the People. And it was a great album. And I said, well, gee, I have this idea that I can do that will fit into that. And I had in the background areas of this cover, of course, I have Ray Charles in the front with a bunch of kids around him.
Mm-hmm.
And in the background, hovering in the crowd, is something similar to Mount Rushmore, which I had like Washington, Lincoln, merged in the clouds.
Yes.
And that was the first thing for that. It wasn't one of my best pieces of art, but it was a precursor to a few things.
How old was Ray at that time? And how old were you at that time, for that matter?
Oh, I don't even know how old I was. Maybe 35. Yeah, because it was before I went to Motown. I went to Motown when I was 35. This must have been a little bit before that. Because how I got to Motown was just a friend of mine. I didn't even know who they were. I received a call from Gwen Gordy, which is Barry Gordy's sister. And I'm at work. She says, Al, I just heard this tape you did called a song called Mirror, Mirror, something which was sort of like Isaac Hayes. I used to play a lot with instruments. I've always broke the rules. So I would take a guitar and put paper between the strings, any old thing, just to make something, do something different.
Yes.
And so she had heard this tape, and so she gave me a call. Well, we'd like to talk to you. Because I would have never signed to Motown intentionally, because I had always, it was a fear of mine that they abused the black artists.
Right.
And stuff like that with the mob connections and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
And so she was breaking away from that. And at the time, Motown was sort of dysfunctional because, you had Barry sort of going into the movies then and sort of relinquishing the music production and writing to Suzanne DePaz. And then you had the Gwen Gordy, which is the other faction, and all these people vying for that piece of the pie. And I just got caught in the middle. And eventually they bought up my contract. So that's how I ended up at Motown. But in the process, I wanted to be a producer. I couldn't get a big budget enough. And so the digital elements were coming in and MIDI. And I was fascinated by MIDI. And that was the time when Run DMC were using their drum machine and stuff. But I was discovering that, I could use MIDI and maybe I could write a string section and only hire 3 violins and have them double with the synthesized sound. And so, and therefore creating a bigger orchestration for what I couldn't get a budget for to make.
Right.
And I had to become an independent to do that. But it just didn't work out in the cards because I just didn't have the time. It was just, so I decided to make a choice and go with Art Masters, always hoping that I would make enough money there to get out of there and go do my own thing in art. And of course, like most people, you never know the gravy train's going to end.
Right.
So you just sort of put it off, and so you buy a new car and you spend it more than you make. And, then with the divorce payments and everything, that you never have any money, and then it stops.
Yeah.
And so I just got caught into that. So being a designer by nature is sort of like an inventor.
I have to ask you though, because you've called yourself a designer a couple different times. obviously you're a multidisciplinary, think of you as a multidisciplinary artist, but when you think of yourself, are you an artist first, designer first? I mean,
honestly,
if you had to pick a label, what would it be?
It would be probably a designer. And the reason I'm going to specify, I've been thinking a lot about that lately.
Okay.
It's because I think if I were to come up with a phrase that I would put it, I'm creating a new website, I would call it art by design.
Yeah.
Those words are very specific. The meaning is this. I believe in the utilitarian nature and aspect of the art. I think that's what's been lost. All right. I create a product. When you do art as a product, which I did for 24 years, meaning this, all right, I'm going to make a seascape and the color trend is this. The wallpaper is this. The carpet is this. That is that. So I could, by design, create an art piece. All right. Now, after leaving there and going and visualizing what's going on into the fine art world, I said, well, gee, there's an in-between stuff here where maybe I'm not the greatest artist in the world because, like Norman Rockwell, when he died, he was front page for a week.
Yeah.
Picasso died, he was front page for a paragraph for a day.
Yeah.
So I said, well, gee, there must be something in between that where it can be affordable and actually be real collectible art. So I decided to design that art.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually take as a challenge, and I always consider myself as an artist of the people because I want to paint what they want. I'm not trying to tell a story. I want to tell your story. I want to do an editorial and let you fill in the gaps. Just like if I were to write a song and you adopt the lyrics because of something that you believe in and you feel.
Right.
Rather than tell my story.
Right.
Because you're always going to have an opinion and you can't help but to have it come out. I did a portrait of somebody, by the way, of the A&R at ABC Records, which is, I do a lot of portraits, which is the downfall of portraits. And if you get close to a person, you actually get to see who they really are.
Yeah.
And subconsciously, you might not even be aware of this. But what happens is, I did this portrait, and everybody loved this portrait. I did the portrait from a photograph, but I had met this lady prior to that.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the time, you don't meet the people
right.
that I do. I'm just doing the photograph, so I'm just attaching whatever to it. But even then, you have some feeling about that person. You know what I'm trying to say?
Right.
And
vibe.
And you can't help but to have that come out. And I didn't know that. So I'm just copying the photograph. So stroke for stroke, it's identical. It looks like the person. Everybody loves it. I had met this lady, and she wasn't a very pleasant person.
Mm.
And when she saw the portrait, she hated it.
Right.
And what she hated
she really
about
hated herself, but that's a whole nother thing.
Well, the point is, I put something in it that I didn't know I put in it because I couldn't help but to put it in. So even though I'm doing art by design, I am putting myself into that.
Mm.
It's just a limitation. It reverses a thing like, they say, create outside the box.
Right.
I create inside the box.
Mm.
You give me a red pencil and tell me to make something. Well, I can make something with a red pencil.
Mm-hmm.
You could tell me you got 1,000,000 pencils to use. You know what I'm trying to say?
Mm.
And I might pick a red pencil.
Yeah.
The difference is that I'm making something that somebody wants.
Right.
And the challenge is for me to make that. I can't help but to fulfill myself. At least that's my feeling. And since I've been blessed with the fact that I have the ability to do that, not many artists today can do whatever they want to do.
Right.
Swim, I'm talking about from the skill level.
Yeah.
And since I have that skill and I can do that, Now, if someone, being a designer, we have a product, say, for example, Picasso selling. We actually have a commercial market for Picasso type image.
Right.
Well, I'll go make one.
Yeah.
It'll look like Picasso made it.
Right.
Because I'll go study Picasso, everything he did, everything. I'll find out what's the essence of that.
Yeah.
And then what colors is it now?
Right.
Because people are only going to buy what we had one of the biggest phases of colors in the using the commercial art field of avocado.
Right.
Avocado, killed everything because they made refrigerators avocado, carpet avocados, everything.
1970s, baby.
Every new apartment came in. If it wasn't gold to avocado,
Yeah.
but you know what? Those apartments were there for 20 years after avocado was dead.
Right.
But you know what? People still had to have something to go with the avocado.
Right. Well, I really appreciate what you're saying because I got my start as a graphic designer, and that word designer, like there's an intention to that, art for art's sake, right? Somebody once said, pure art has no utility, right? There's no, and what we're talking about is, creating art that serves a purpose, that meets a need. And there's an intention to that. There's a strategy to that. There's a thought process to that.
You're pointing it at some place.
Right.
Besides, I want to say this.
That's right. And, and that takes real skill. That takes real intelligence. That takes a robust toolbox. So this the world of I would love to better understand what it was like to work at this company where, forgive the analogy, but I mean, you're mass producing art. You're a factory, right?
Yeah.
Of creating artwork, and you've got to be damn talented to be able to perform in that environment and do it for as many years as you did that. I mean,
well, yeah. Well, I was fortunate to be probably the top designer in that field for most of the years. Like I said, we do a lot of research. I mean, this is the way our design process would happen. The owners and stuff would go out, and of course, you have different areas of the company with different demographics that will buy certain things. If it's the Florida market, certain things because they have tourists and everything.
Yeah.
And if it's the Midwest, it's certain things.
Yep.
And trends are trends. They just become things that are trends. They're fleeting, but they're there.
Right.
And you're making something for the mass multitude of people.
Yeah.
Now, the only thing is after you have the demographics and you say, well, these are the colors of all the fabrics that all the manufacturers are going to be using. You go to these companies like we would go to High Point in Hickory, North Carolina, once a year. And that market is the wholesale market for the world. Internationally, they go there and they buy their products, whether it be sculpture art or whatever it is, for the consumer market.
Yeah.
Now, however, I must interject, though, now looking back, I see my images on TV screens in the back of motion picture, everything.
Right.
And it's just commercial art.
Yeah.
That people don't really know that this field really exists.
Right. Well, yeah. And that's,
you have a person. At one time, we had like 50 artists. And you can imagine big rows of easels.
Yeah. 100
feet. The same thing up and down. Well, I came up with this thing about, of course, my added thing was I added silk screen and I added airbrush and all these things. And if you look at something like Photoshop or something like that, where you work in layers, think of art in layers. It's always been in layers.
Yeah, right.
The phenomenal thing, like when I was a kid, I used to go to the museum and look at the art. And I'd see all the detail and I'd say, gee, how the hell did he do that? Every time I put yellow on top of green, it turns brown.
Right.
But it's not done that way. If you think of it in layers, it becomes very simplistic. And what we would do is we would make this one master piece. And I always say, well, gee, you don't want to waste any motion, whether it's moving or anything else. And the mind can remember certain things, but in detail, and it can be very, very accurate and repetitive. So I would say like I've got 100 feet of something. And in between that, I might have 50 of the same subject. And maybe they're on a table or whatever. And I would look at this original and I'd try to remember two things. There's a dot about that much from the center of the pupil. Then there's a slash right there on the other thing. I do one. I go all the way down, just one, done. It's automatic.
Right.
Do the other coming back, then pick up two more things.
Right.
Dot. It goes so fast, it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
You paint hundreds of paintings in a week.
Wow.
And they're all hand done because it can't be all accurate.
Right.
Like machine done.
Yeah. Right. There's got to
But
be
in
that
a-
hand, that human
But in
touch.
effect, yeah. And so looking back, I mean, my son called me up the other day, says, Dad, you know, a lot of your things from Art Master I've seen on eBay. I mean, there must be 1 million likes. Not likes, I mean, 1 million hits.
Yeah.
And I'm saying, oh, you're crazy. So I go look at them, and I'm seeing these things, and they were called the Letterman. I used surnames when I was doing these things because I had my own art career,
Right.
and I didn't want it to interfere.
So wait, so your alias was Letterman?
Oh, yeah, and a few others, too.
And
Collins,
I've
DeLongford,
seen Letterman.
all over the place. They're all over the world, man.
Oh my God, you're Letterman!
That's right.
Holy shit! I think my mom had a Letterman in there.
That's right. I mean, and
wow!
so
Breaking news, ladies and gentlemen. Not Real Art Podcast has Letterman on our show today. This is incredible.
I said, well, gee, I should know it to create a site of all these Letterman so that they can create their own database, because what I was finding from the eBay searchers, they were trying to see if these things had a value.
Right.
Because you think about it, 50 years or so, or 30 years, and they're in somebody's garage.
Yeah.
They're quality pieces of art. They really are, because with the silk screen, I was being able to maintain good drawing and skill and stuff. So using the paint by number thing, sort of like the Ken Cage studio thing did later. He didn't start that, by the way.
Right.
Yeah.
You did.
Right. By the way, all the products that you see them selling today, all the acrylic products, modeling paste, all those things.
Yeah.
Yes, we were on the forefront of all of that stuff. So we would create these products to make them look like they were really time consuming.
Yeah.
And how that whole, by the way, when I went into this field, they used to do these drip paintings. They were Spanish galleons. You wouldn't know anything about this. And you would do this sort of like you decorate a cake with a bottle, but you become very skillful with it. So you're drawing with a bottle of glue.
Right.
And then you would do glue over these drawings, and then you'd do a little dry brushing, gold leaf here and there. And they were a cheap way of making art, and they put them into these thrifties and all those kind of stores. Then it graduated to things like J.C. Penney's, Montgomery Ward, and all those places. And we made it, Art Master just made it more sophisticated. What I brought to the table was, gee, I could actually go do a Mona Lisa.
Right.
At a cost.
Right.
And so getting back to these Letterman things, I created all these fictitious names, and we developed a department where the customers would write in and say, what is Letterman making today? Where is he at? Where is he? And we'd create these stories and everything to sell that element so that people would feel that they were buying something authentic, and they would call up like, gee, I love this painting. I put it in my bedroom, and this real, whatever the subject is.
Sure.
And so it ended up being a selling point because people needed this illusion to buy this art.
How many aliases did you have? What were
I
your
must have
aliases?
had about 30 or 40 of them. I was thinking lately that I might create a site just about the Letterman. I wasn't the only designer, as it turned out.
Yeah.
But initially, when I went to that company, we had like 6 employees. One was a framer, one was an accountant. Because
So
it's
you
a
were on the ground
family-owned
floor.
business.
You were on the ground floor, really, with 6 employees.
Oh, yeah. And when I went there, I didn't even want to go there. And by the way, I had just left Ray Charles' studio, and I went there because they actually my dad's name is the same as mine, Albert Willis. So they actually contacted my dad, and my family and everything was trying to get me to get a job.
Right, get a real job.
Yeah. And so, I'd never planned to have kids. They just sort of happened. My wife was on birth control pills and everything, and she got pregnant anyway.
Surprise.
And so I'm saying, damn, right when I quit my job, we got a baby. So, you got to go do your thing there. And so I was just leaving every day to go make some money. And so they called my dad and says, gee, are you Albert Willis? He says, yeah, I am. This is so no, that's my son.
Right.
And they called me, and they happened to be right around the corner from me. 2 blocks.
Serendipitous.
And so I went over and I talked to them, and I didn't even want to work for them no damn way. I just did it to please my wife because she was yelling in my ear, we need some money. So I went and I talked to them, and I had worked for a company before called Bertini Studios, which was the predecessor for our other competitor, Vanguard Studio, which is a very big name.
Mm-hmm.
We were always competitors all the way through. And so I talked to them, and they said, well, gee. I said, well, gee, I got this idea that I can maybe, instead of doing designs for you, they wanted me to make product for them.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to be in the music field. I don't want to make no product. I said, temporarily, I can do this, appease my parents, appease my wife,
mm-hmm.
make a little money,
mm-hmm.
and do my music.
Yeah, right, right.
And my art.
It's a side hustle for your real gig, yeah.
And so it just turned into this big thing. I said, well, look, I'll tell you what. I'll show you how you can do it yourself. That way, you own your product.
Right, well.
That's a decisive decision because that company became huge. And if I had decided to make it myself, that would have been me.
Yeah.
So that's a decision that we all make. I don't regret the decision, but it was sort of, in hindsight, sort of foolish.
Hindsight's 20/20.
Because I gave them the tools, and I did have this idea about, just sort of new at the time,
mm-hmm.
and I showed them how to do it. I remember we started with silk screen. And can you imagine, first of all, we silk screen, we're only using the colors of black, because we just do a drawing, put a few washers here and there, a few texture things here and there, and that was enough. And we were doing them on masonite. Then we decided, well, we can do this on canvas, and make it simulate
mm-hmm.
real art,
mm-hmm.
because that thing about canvas, if it's on canvas, it's worth more.
Yeah, right. Sure.
Yeah. And so we did that. And then we gradually decided, instead of making little small pieces, we decided to go to 30/40, 24/48. Then eventually 48 by 60, which became a hallmark of all the production art companies. We weren't the only one, but we were the only one using my kind of product with the silk screen and stuff. It allowed us to, the artists, our copy artists, which were very skillful, to do very realistic type thing. The animal stuff there rivals any animal art you're going to see anywhere,
mm-hmm.
Period.
Mm-hmm.
And because we could do all the hairs, we created brushes to where you could extend the hair. They're all illusions, painting.
Yeah.
It's an illusion. People don't realize it. They look at it and they see every little tiny stroke, but realizing a sponge.
Right.
Things like that will do all of that in a flash,
Yeah.
And so we teach our artists these skills, but what I had to do was not only create the original, but map out how to do it. And in the process, we ended up pre-mixing colors so that the artist didn't have to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Then what does that do? Think about it. Got 1,000 pre-mixed colors. What do you got to do? Now you got a paint department.
Yeah.
You got to make paint.
Right.
Then you got to store that paint.
Yeah.
Somewhere they can find it.
Right. Supply chain stuff.
No, this company existed for years without the computer. What has it?
Right.
Now we got to put it on computer.
Let's stop here for a minute and ponder that, right? Because we're living in such a digital age, it is hard to imagine, right, this world where like you're doing art, but this is what we're talking about. This is the kind of pedigree that a true artist, arguably has. You have these skills, you can do the stuff by hand, and you're doing this. You're using your brain, not the computer. You're using your brain.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it's a growing process. But still, again, I tell you today, I guess with the advantage of me going through all of this, I see so much potential with the computer. I just wish kids had the background that I have.
You're right.
And like I told you, when I went to art school, I learned, they made me go to class. I hated this class called Materials and Methods. You go in there and you play with plaster, just junk. And I'm saying, I didn't come to school for this. I came to be like Norman Rockwell. I want to draw the nudes. Where are the nudes at?
That's my favorite class.
Yeah. And but that class coupled with, I worked with my dad. My dad was a handyman. He did everything.
Mm-hmm.
So he'd do a painting job, and he would bring home the cans of paint.
Mm-hmm.
And say he'd bring home, the little leftover stuff that's in the bottom of the cans of paint.
Yep.
So that was my paint. So if there was only yellow and greenish green and whatever,
Right.
that was what I painted with.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I painted on whatever that
Had to paint on. Yeah.
plywood, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that was the beginning of my career. And
That's because being an artist isn't a job, it's a calling. Right?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
It's a suffering that goes with that. I'm not, I used to say, I believe in the starving artist, quote, now. But all my life, that's not been my experience because I haven't been in the fine art world. I've just been in the commercial art world, making a living doing art.
Right.
Right.
So how long were you with that company?
I was with Art Master for 24 years.
And where are they now?
They're gone.
They're long gone.
Yes. Matter of fact, in 93, when they sort of went off the market, the original owners of that company, the Oleskis, who hired me and I worked for,
Mm-hmm.
who was a brilliant salesperson
Mm-hmm.
that helped that company become great. He sold the company at a good time. He did it in 93. And in 93, the new owners came in with a corporate structure and tried to structure it
Mm-hmm.
that way, but it was more people-oriented business. And so they sort of forced me out,
Yeah.
even though I resigned. But
Right.
the point is, they wanted to own everything that I created.
Yeah.
Basically, as an inventor, nobody knows when you make that thing happen. It might happen at 3:00 at night.
Right. You're just
I'd be
solving
driving on
problems.
the freeway and I say, oh.
Yeah.
So how it works is like that.
Right.
It's never turned off. And so they claim that, gee, well, if you work for me, any idea you had,
Yeah.
I pretty
Work for
much
hire.
own.
That's right. That's right.
So I have to leave.
Right. So, see, I want to take a step back a little bit because I want, so many of our listeners, are probably too young to appreciate what we're talking about in a certain way because, like, I grew up, in the 70s and the 80s. We went to the mall. There was a mall. There was a department store. We shopped at JCPenney's. We shopped at Sears. We shopped at Carson Perry Scott. We shopped at, Kmart and, these department stores. And they all had art, home decor and art departments,
Yeah.
art sections. And you would go and you would see these paintings and you would see, and for our listeners' sake, like the company that you work for, American Masters, they're the ones making this art.
Oh, exactly.
You are the one. Letterman was the artist's name on the piece that you would see at Sears
Exactly.
that your mom would buy and bring and hang on
Exactly.
your family room wall.
Exactly. And remember, this is happening internationally.
Right.
America isn't the only market.
That's right. That's right. It's a global phenomena.
Everybody's trying to be America-like,
Yeah.
even in China.
Right. Right.
I had an opportunity to go design in China. I just chose, I didn't want to move and live there. They have probably greatest artists printing techniques in the world. They invented printing.
Yeah. Right.
But what they didn't have was the concept of design
Yeah.
for the American market,
Right.
which they were trying to emulate.
Right. Well, what's happening with this space now? Because, obviously Amazon has killed the department store, has killed the mall. These companies, like...
There's still some art.
Yeah.
This art is still there. It's just that a lot of it, if it isn't imported, is inferior, mediocre art.
Mhm.
Because how can you pay these people?
Yeah.
Even when I was going, like, $14 an hour was pretty good money.
Yeah. Right.
Right now, that's starving wages.
Yeah. Right.
So now you think of it in terms of time. These pieces that you're going to look at, the Letterman pieces, probably took about 45 minutes to an hour a piece in total time.
Right. Right.
What would that cost today?
Yeah.
Now you go to the store, these pieces are still selling for about the same price retail that they were 20, 30 years ago.
Mm.
So what can you get for that?
Mm.
Almost nothing.
Mm.
So But what they failed to do, and I think we were a little bit behind, our technology wasn't fast enough, or was affordable for us, is to go into the printed world, sort of like the G clay.
Yeah.
To where, because now thinking back, instead of me using the silk screen, and I was all the way up to some pieces, 12 screens.
Yeah, right.
Right now, gee, I could kick that in the ass if I were doing that starting today.
Yeah.
Just by doing an inkjet print and having the artist work on top of that, sort of like Kincaid.
Right.
All you're doing is you're adding some colors to something.
Yeah.
So you just do it in preparation for what you're going to add.
Right.
In other words, instead of making something as blue as it's going to be,
right,
let the artist add
yeah,
that.
Yeah, the technology that's available now versus what again, everything was handcrafted in so many ways and invented on site, or, as you were creating these sort of supply chains or mass market or mass produce kinds of workflows. But the technology now, this print on demand stuff, I don't even know if you're aware of this, but like so many of these websites now that are selling art, they're just printing on demand.
Well, that's why I'm moving. So now what I'm doing now is, you notice on my site, which is pretty much, I designed that whole site in 2008. It's an impressive site, and it's probably way too big and too much stuff for a person to really get anything. So I use it primarily as a portfolio or a starting block.
Yeah.
To let people come and see some stuff. And since it's not costing me anything, I leave it there in place. But this print on demand has made it so that everybody can do it. Anybody can do it.
Right.
And everything is art. So it almost makes art nothing.
That's right.
So now it's
the ultimate commodification.
Yeah, we're so flooded with this stuff that you could take a picture on your phone, put it into Photoshop, use one of their filters, digitally add some brush strokes to it, and then automatically you're an artist.
Right.
And even though you can create some nice pieces, some of them, but you're an amateur. But basically you can do a limited edition piece. So what I've come up with, a way of doing original copies, so to speak, to where I create a piece, and which is why, I love the technical skills of the old stuff, which I told you is dying. And I just found a way of keeping it alive a little longer by making it three-dimensional, because I think that's the element that we're getting into.
Right.
Because the future art is going to be pretty much like you buy a video or anything. You're going to say, with a hologram, I decide I want a sculpture of David.
Right. And there it is.
Yeah. And then I'm not in the mood for that tonight. I got a girl coming over. So I want to, and that's where the art is going.
Right.
So you're going to own those pieces, and they're going to look and feel real. And you know what else they're going to do? They're going to smell.
Right.
Could you imagine going to a movie theater today when you go into the foul bathroom and the guy is beating the guy and he's sticking his head in the toilet, but you smell the latrine?
Yeah.
It's going to be there.
Yeah.
This is going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is not far removed.
My bathroom already smells bad enough. I'm really.
Well, it's not only that. Right. It's a good aromas and stuff too.
Yeah.
But the sense of smell is a strong, sensual thing. It's just as strong as visual.
Yeah, for sure.
And that element is easy.
Right. And the bigger point being that technology is truly opening up these opportunities in a way that is exciting for artists. If you're a creator, you have all these different, again, as I was saying, like we have more tools, more mediums, more technologies than ever.
But remember, the cream always rises to the top.
That's right.
I don't care how many people can create their own photography and their own thing. The true artist is going to go a step further.
But you're hitting on a powerful point here, because the cream rises to the top. That's true, and over the years, right, that sort of always meant that the cream was the best. The cream was the right. And what's happening now, though, in our social media age, is that cream is actually being defined now more by social media metrics than the actual maybe quality of the work. So an artist might be judged as talented or successful because they have 100,000 followers on Instagram,
Well, exactly.
not necessarily because they're a proficient technician and have a sense of art history and are creating something new in terms of the conversation, right? I have a story that I loathe to tell, but I tell it because it illustrates this. So several years ago, we had a booth at a trade show called Surtex. Now, Surtex, you might know, it's an art licensing show. So this is where the brands and the manufacturers come to meet the artists and the designers who are creating the art and the key art that they'll license for product or what have you. And so we had this booth. It was a 1,000 square foot booth. We had a bunch of artists on display. And this art buyer from, I guess she was with, I think she was with Macy's, actually. She comes in and she sees this artist that we have, and she has this visceral reaction. She says, "Oh my gosh, that artist, they're amazing. I love this. This is perfect for us. I'm so glad, to see this." I'm like, "Wonderful. That's great. I'm so glad that you think they're appropriate for Macy's." And she said, "Please tell me, how many Instagram followers do they have?"
Yes.
Right.
Well,
And when I told her 32,000 or whatever it was,
well, there were
she became disinterested.
Yeah, tribal following.
Yeah. Well, and lazy thinking.
Yes.
Because here she was, she'd been with an art buyer, supposedly a professional art buyer for Macy's for years. She had this gut visceral reaction. She knew that it was right, but she began to doubt her own expertise because we're living in this era now where social media metrics become a hallmark for.
You can't ignore it only for the simple fact that if you have so many followers, that is a platform that's listening, possibly.
Possibly. That's right. She doesn't even understand about click farms and everything else.
Yeah.
You can buy this, and, pump this stuff up. But the point is that I had to explain to her, listen, first of all, there's only one Banksy. There's only one Shepard Fairey. If you want to, go and talk to those guys, good luck. The point is that artists are here to make the art. You're the marketer.
Yeah.
And what they really want, they want to take the risk or mitigate the risk out of their business proposition of betting on that artist. So they're using that social media metric as a way of gauging risk, right?
Yes.
Right. And so
that's why you make a remake of an old movie that's been a hit.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And I just had to explain to her, it's like, look, the artist is here to make the art. You're the marketer. You just had a visceral reaction to say that this art was great for your brand, great for your customer. You know that intuitively. Anyway, this is the times we're living in. It's crazy.
Yeah, it is. It is. I don't know. I think I'm unsuccessful because I haven't spent enough time dealing with my brand, realizing that I've always thought that the art would sell itself. I mean, you could actually just go make a piece and have somebody look at it. But realizing that that's just my naive impression, I think. I think what people are really wanting to buy when it comes to art, they're wanting to buy a piece of the artist.
Right.
So when they buy that Picasso or whatever, it's almost like for a moment I got to share a piece of him and his thoughts. And so the branding becomes that in today's age. Yeah, so Taylor Swift is making this song and she's got this big thing there. So if I got this too, then I can be a part of her world.
That's right.
As an escapism, maybe.
Yeah. And in that connection, it's like I'm connected to this.
Yes.
This
and that
person I
connection
admire.
is what they're buying
Yeah.
more than they are how great the art is.
Right.
Because I've watched people look at my art and they'll say, gee, that is just a great piece. It's a great piece and buy nothing.
What's that about? What do you think that's about?
Well, one of the things is affordability, probably, because I can't afford to give it away. And secondly is just that you get used to something that's sort of watered down. I mean, McDonald's is the best fry, but is it?
Right.
Is it just that you acquired a taste for it?
Yeah, right.
And it's popular.
Right.
So everybody else says In-N-Out is the best hamburger, so you got to have an In-N-Out burger because everybody else did.
Yeah, right.
like I belong.
Mm.
Can you imagine being a kid? When you grow up, that's all you want to be. But basically, we're all just old kids.
I try to be. I try to be an old kid. I know I'm old. I don't know about the kid part, but I try to be. Cleophus, it's been such an honor and
Thank you.
and a
It's been an
privilege to
honor
sit
for
down.
me too.
And what a gift! The fact that I knew you were awesome just by reading your bio.
Well, you're
and everything,
making
but the
me
fact that you're Letterman, I had one of your pieces in my house. I know it. I can see the signature in my mind's eye,
Oh, yeah.
and I hadn't thought about that in decades.
And the funny thing about that signature, the reason why I chose that name is because I could do that stick
thing
there very quickly. And when I was signing my name, I sort of did that with the Albert and the Willis, and then now later the Cleophus, which is my middle name, which I'm trying to brand, by the way.
Yes.
And I says, well, gee, this just fit right there. I just Then I used to sign each one. Then after a while, I put the signature into the silk screen so that my artist didn't have to sign it.
Yeah.
Because you realize that to sign it takes time.
That's right. That's right. We got to minimize the time. That's it. Oh my God, this is so great. This is so great. Well, listen, a couple things. One is tell our listeners how they can find you online. How can people get in contact with you?
All right. Right now, I'm a little limited because I'm developing myself fun-wise. Right now, I'm officially a starving artist. I really am. And I'm trying to break into this fine art world, and I got a lot of great art. But right now, you can view my pieces on Alart, meaning one word, A-L-A-R-T design at alartdesign.com. All right. You can contact me personally on alartdesign at hotmail.com and willisworld on gmail.com.
That's great. Now I'm going to have all that stuff on our website when we post this, so people would be able to, read your website URL and you get your email and all that good stuff.
Let me iterate on the newer stuff, though. I'm posting and developing my Instagram, which is Cleophus1, CLEOPHUSONE.
So you're on IG right now?
Yes.
Okay, great.
And you can see some of the new dimensional pieces. I will be putting videos on there. By the way, I'm going to try to do something which is sort of similar to a blog. I haven't seen anybody do it.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm going to try to put different things on and show work in progress, which is going to be the bigger thing I'm going to be doing, showing pieces as I make them. And when you see these sculptural things, you're going to see you can actually see them develop before your eyes.
Cleophus, I'm on Instagram right now. Tell me your IG handle again.
It's Cleophus1. I have some exciting new things that I'm working on. Right now, I'm working on 2, what I call legacy sculptures for Aretha Franklin. I think she's a hot item, and I think it fits right into the scope of what's going on in the world around us.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to create a product more for the sensitive market. The women really decorate the home, and they really spend the time. From my experience, most guys are just happy with a jersey on the wall or something like that, or a Playboy calendar or something.
Yeah.
And so even though a lot of them do decorate their homes, but the women really buy the stuff. So I wanted to create products that are more sensitive to their need, but also have some merit of thought behind them.
Yes.
That fit into our complex cultural thing that's going on.
That's right. Yeah, these are sensitive times for sure. Cleophus, will you promise me to come back and do this again?
I will. I will do that.
I would be honored. And so what's coming up? Like, do you have any shows coming up? Like,
No, I don't.
Okay.
I hope to finish up a few pieces. I might even venture into the area, which I'm a little unfamiliar with the Fund Me. I have some things that I'd like to do. I don't know if anybody have heard of the Art Prize, which is a big show that comes up out of Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd like to finish up a few pieces for that. And it's a unique way of exhibiting, and it's gradually building momentum. They used to do it every year. Now they're doing, I think, every couple of years now. And it has a huge international market.
Yeah.
And the art there is being done spectacularly. But what it does is sort of you send a piece there and it's sponsored by some way, so that the whole city is a gallery.
Right.
So you actually find a a place to send your art.
Mhm.
They sponsor your art while it's there. And it's a competitive exhibition where you can win money,
Right.
large
I've heard of
money
it. Yeah, it's
prizes.
good.
And but I'd like to finish these pieces. Now I got about 12 pieces, these large sculpture things like the Tupac and the Biggie in that area.
Yeah.
And they're quite time consuming. Some of them take as many as 3 or 4 months to make,
Right.
up to 6 months. And a lot of these things are almost made, but I'm at a money funding period in time right now.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to sell out a lot of my inventory of my limited edition prints,
Mm-hmm.
even reducing them down to 50% the cost,
Mm-hmm.
whatever, just to clear out my inventory. Because I don't no longer want to do that. I want to just keep originals.
Right.
So it's a great deal for a lot of people, and certainly getting ready for the holidays. And I like for once to be on target for the first of the year for Black History Month to be able to exhibit someplace
Yep.
a lot of these pieces.
Right. Great. That's great. Well, Cleophas.
So I'm open for suggestions.
Yeah. Amen, brother. Cleophas, it's been an honor.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. We'll be continuing to explore this adventure together. I look forward to having you back.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Hey there. Thanks for tuning in. Please be sure to like this episode and share it with your friends on social. And if you haven't already done so, please be sure to press subscribe and follow us on IG at Not Real Art Official. We appreciate the support. Sourdough out.